3 months ago, I was sleeping behind a diner in Chicago, wrapped in a garbage bag and praying the rain wouldn't soak through my only blanket. My name is Emily Ward. And at 29, I'd already lost everything: my home, my job, and the people I loved most. My husband Ethan ran off with my sister Claire, and together they stole not just my career, but my entire life. I thought I'd hit rock bottom the day I started digging through dumpsters for food, but I was wrong. The night I walked into Street Mercy Shelter, I just wanted a warm bed and a meal. Instead, the intake worker froze when she saw my ID. Her hands began to tremble. "Your name is Emily Ward?" she whispered. When I nodded, she locked the door, pulled down the blinds, and said the words that shattered everything I thought I knew. "We've been searching for you for 25 years. I used to think life had a rhythm you could trust, work hard, love honestly, and the universe would reward you with peace. I was wrong. At 27, I thought I was living the dream. I had a stable job as a senior strategist at Lux Edge Marketing, a corner desk with a skyline view, and a husband who kissed my forehead every morning before I left for work. Ethan Hale, the man who once swore he'd protect me from everything, used to bring me coffee just the way I liked it, strong, with a splash of cream. And then there was Claire, my older sister. Everyone adored her, the golden child, the effortless charmer. She had a way of making people feel like they mattered, even when she was quietly taking something from them. Still, she was my best friend. She helped plan my wedding, toasted us with teary eyes, called Ethan the brother I never had. But somewhere along the way, those eyes stopped tearing for me. It began with small things. Ethan started coming home later, smelling faintly of Claire's citrus perfume. She stopped by our apartment more often, sometimes to drop off wine, sometimes to help with Ethan's tech issues. I ignored the signs. Love makes you blind, and family makes you foolish. Then one morning, my supervisor at LuxEdge called me in. "Emily," she said carefully, "we've received several complaints about account discrepancies. The partners think it's best you take a leave of absence." "What? That's impossible. My reports are clean." She sighed, sliding a file across the table. "I'm sorry, but the data suggests otherwise." Inside were fake invoices all signed with my name. I stormed home, shaking, and found Ethan and Claire sitting on the couch. They didn't even look guilty. "Is this your idea of a joke?" I demanded, throwing the file down. Claire crossed her legs slowly, smiling. "It's not personal, Em. You were just in the way." "In the way of what?" "My future," she said, voice calm as glass. "And his." Ethan didn't meet my eyes. "You're too emotional. You always have been." That night, I packed a bag, but there was nowhere to go. 2 days later, my position was officially terminated. My company laptop, phone, and ID card were disabled. My apartment lease, co-signed by Ethan, was abruptly canceled. By the end of the week, my entire life had been deleted like an old email. I tried calling my parents, but Claire had gotten to them first. "Emily's struggling," she must have said. "She's unstable." Because when I finally did get Mom on the phone, her voice was strained and distant. "Sweetheart, maybe it's best you take some time to get help." Help. That word echoed in my head for weeks until I had nothing left but the cold, the silence, and the question that would haunt me later. Who was I, really, before they took everything? The first night I slept in my car, I told myself it was temporary. I still had my resume, my degree, and enough pride to believe I could rebuild. But reality doesn't care about pride or resumes. The second week, my car battery died. I sat there in the dark, watching frost crawl across the windshield, and realized that no one was coming to save me. I pawned my engagement ring for $80. It bought 2 days in a cheap motel and a handful of meals from gas stations. When the money ran out, I started walking from one shelter to another, pretending I was just between apartments, pretending I wasn't terrified. People think homelessness is loud, shouting, sirens, chaos, but it's not. It's quiet. It's the sound of being invisible. You learn to stop making eye contact, because people only see what they're comfortable seeing. A homeless woman in her 20s? Too messy for sympathy. Too young for pity. One night, I was standing outside a grocery store when someone called my name. "Emily?" I turned and froze. It was Mrs. Patterson, a former client from LuxEdge. "Oh, dear," she said softly, eyes darting to my torn coat. I heard what happened. You poor thing. Her smile faltered, and she stepped back, clutching her shopping bag like a shield. That was the moment I learned there's something worse than hunger shame. By January, I'd lost 20 pounds and most of my hope. I kept a notebook from my old office job. I'd flip through it at night, tracing my handwriting, trying to remember the woman who used to sign contracts and lead meetings. She felt like a ghost. Then came the snowstorm. The temperature dropped to 14 degrees, and my car had long since been towed. I tried to sleep under an awning behind a diner, using trash bags for warmth. I remember thinking, if I close my eyes, maybe I just won't wake up. A voice woke me instead. You'll die out here, sweetheart. It was an older woman in a red coat, Sister Marianne, a volunteer from Street Mercy Shelter. She handed me a cup of coffee and a card. Go there. They'll take you in, no questions asked. I stared at the card for a long time that night. Street Mercy Shelter, 1432 Jefferson Street. The name sounded like a joke. Mercy wasn't something I believed in anymore. But when I woke the next morning, my fingers were blue from the cold, and my body was shaking uncontrollably. I didn't have the strength to argue with fate, so I started walking. 4 miles through dirty snow, my boots soaked, my breath fogging like smoke. Every step felt like dragging a corpse my own. When I finally saw the faded red sign that said, St. Mercy Shelter, I thought I'd reached the end of my story. But really, it was just the beginning. The shelter smelled like bleach and old coffee, a mix of safety and desperation. I stood in a line of strangers clutching plastic bags, waiting for my turn to sign in. The walls were painted pale yellow, but under the flickering fluorescent lights, everything looked gray. When it was finally my turn, the woman at the desk smiled automatically. Her name tag read, Joyce Mallory, Intake Supervisor. Name? She asked, her voice professional but kind. Emily Ward, I said, handing her my ID. Her fingers froze mid-type. The smile faded. She looked at the screen, then at me, then back again like she was trying to solve a puzzle she didn't want to finish. Date of birth? April 9th, 1996. Her pupils dilated. And place of birth? Portland, Oregon. She swallowed hard, then whispered, Could you wait here a moment? Before I could respond, she stood so abruptly her chair slammed against the wall. She hurried to a back office, leaving me alone with the sound of the humming computer and murmurs from the other residents. Someone behind me joked, Guess she found your secret file, huh? I tried to smile, but my heart was hammering. Then I heard the sharp click of a lock. The door to the lobby had been bolted from the inside. Joyce returned a minute later, pale and trembling. She reached up and pulled the blinds shut, one by one. The room darkened. People started murmuring nervously. Ma'am, I said, my throat tightening. Is there a problem? She didn't answer. She picked up the phone instead. Her voice was low but urgent. This is intake station 12, she said. Authorization code 7, Alpha 9. We've found her, Emily Ward confirmed. She paused, listening. Yes, I'm certain. Locking down now. My stomach dropped. Found me? Found me for what? Joyce hung up slowly, her eyes never leaving my face. Ma'am, I whispered. What's going on? She sat down across from me, folding her shaking hands together. Emily, she said carefully, I need you to stay calm. Do you have any reason to believe someone might be looking for you? I almost laughed. I'm homeless. No one's looking for me. Joyce blinked fast, then reached into a locked drawer and pulled out a manila folder sealed with red tape. On the front, I caught the words Testament Program, Subject 9, classified before she flipped it open. There was a photograph of a baby maybe 3 or 4 years old, with a crescent-shaped birthmark on her shoulder. The same birthmark I had. Joyce's voice shook as she spoke. Emily, according to this file, you're not supposed to exist. You died 25 years ago. The room seemed to tilt. My hands went numb. That's impossible, I whispered. But Joyce just looked at me with something between fear and awe, and said the words that made the air leave my lungs. We've been searching for you for 25 years. For a long moment, I couldn't speak. My brain felt disconnected from my body. You're joking, I finally whispered. This is some kind of sick mistake. Joyce didn't smile. She slid the folder toward me, her trembling fingers leaving faint smudges on the paper. Please, look for yourself. Inside was a birth certificate. Name, Lydia Cross. Date of birth, the 9th of April 1996. Mother, Dr. Evelyn Cross. Biochemist, Testament Research Facility. Father, classified. My throat went dry. That's my birthday. Joyce nodded. I know. She turned another page, a photo of a toddler with a crescent birthmark on her left shoulder. My shoulder. My birthmark. I slammed the folder shut. This is ridiculous. My parents are David and Margaret Ward. I grew up in Portland. I went to Lincoln Elementary. Joyce leaned forward, voice gentle but steady. Emily, those weren't your parents. They were your guardians. Your mother, Dr. Evelyn Cross, worked for a classified government project called Testament. 25 years ago, there was a lab explosion. 2 confirmed dead, 1 child missing. That child was you. I stood up, shaking my head. No, I'm not some experiment. I'm just... The words wouldn't come. Joyce reached across the table and pressed something into my hand, a silver locket. Inside was a tiny photo. A young woman in a lab coat, dark hair tied back, smiling down at a baby with my eyes. She left this behind, Joyce said softly. It was found in the ruins of the lab. I felt dizzy, the walls closing in. You're saying my whole life? My name? My parents? My memories? Are lies? Joyce's eyes filled with tears. Not lies. Protections. I sank back into the chair, my pulse thrumming in my ears. Why me? What was she protecting me from? Before Joyce could answer, her phone buzzed. She answered, her face tightening. Understood, she whispered, then hung up. They're on their way, she said. Federal agents. 2 teams, 1 official, 1 not. Some want to protect you. Others. She didn't finish. A chill ran through me. Others what? Others might want you gone. I gripped the folder so tightly the paper cut my palm. You said she worked for the government. What did she do? Joyce hesitated, then opened another section of the file, technical reports filled with medical jargon. Your mother was part of a classified biogenetic enhancement program. They were trying to create immunity children resistant to disease, injury, even aging. 7 test subjects. 6 died before their 5th birthday. And the 7th? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Joyce looked at me, her eyes shimmering. You, she said. You were the success. But your mother destroyed the program to keep them from replicating you. She faked your death and hid you with the wards. I stared at her, the weight of it all pressing down until I could barely breathe. My name, my life, everything, just a cover story. And somewhere out there, the people who once created me had finally found me again. Joyce flipped another page of the folder, revealing a series of old black and white photographs, sterile rooms, chrome tables, infants in incubators marked with numbers instead of names. I felt my stomach twist. These are the original files from the Testament Project, she said quietly. Your mother, Dr. Evelyn Cross, was one of its lead scientists. She believed she was creating a cure for genetic diseases, designing stronger immune systems, faster healing, better resistance to toxins. Her voice softened. But when she discovered the project was being sold to private defense contractors, she panicked. They didn't want to save people. They wanted to own them. I stared at one photo. A woman in a lab coat holding a baby, eyes full of love and fear. That's her, I whispered. That's my mother. Joyce nodded. When Dr. Cross realized what was happening, she burned everything files, research, the entire lab. 2 people died in the explosion. Everyone thought she perished too, and the last recorded trace of her daughter Yu was that night. My chest tightened. She died trying to protect me. Joyce's eyes glistened. Yes. She left a note for whoever found you. Raise her as your own. Never let her know what she is. The wards did exactly that. I ran a shaking hand through my hair. So all these years, my entire life was a lie built to hide a secret I didn't even know existed? Joyce hesitated. Emily, there's more. She turned to the final section of the file, recent activity logs, stamped with red ink. Helio Biosystems, Testament Revival Initiative. I frowned. What is this? It's a continuation of your mother's project, Joyce said. A new company bought the surviving patents. They've been searching for original genetic material samples from the first generation. That's why they wanted you. I scanned the company name again. Something about it made my skin crawl. Then it clicked. Helio, I whispered. That's Ethan's company. Joyce looked startled. Your husband? Ex-husband, I corrected bitterly. He works under his father, Richard Hale. He said they did tech and biomedical logistics. Joyce's expression darkened. Richard Hale was one of the investors in the original Testament project. He's been looking for Dr. Cross's research for decades. The realization hit like a thunderclap. Ethan hadn't just betrayed me for greed or lust, he'd been after me the whole time. All those coincidences, my firing, the stolen files, the fake accusations. It wasn't about destroying my reputation. It was about eliminating my cover. I slammed my hand on the table. So they set me up, drove me out to flush me into the open. Joyce nodded grimly. And they succeeded. A cold fury rose inside me, sharper than fear. Where are they now? Before she could answer, headlights cut through the window blinds, 3 black SUVs pulling up outside the shelter. Joyce's voice dropped to a whisper. Emily, listen to me. They've found you. My blood ran cold. Who? Joyce met my eyes, her voice trembling. Your husband, your sister, and the man who built the world that destroyed your mother. The shelter lights flickered as engines roared outside. Tires screeched against wet asphalt. Joyce rushed to the window and peeked through the blinds, her face turned pale. They're here, she whispered. I followed her gaze. 3 SUVs had pulled up in front of the building. Black suits stepped out first, men with earpieces and the kind of calm that comes from being armed. And then I saw them. Ethan, Claire, and behind them, an older man I recognized from a framed photo that used to sit on our mantel. Richard Hale, Ethan's father, founder of Helio Biosystems. My stomach twisted. They came themselves? Joyce nodded, backing away. They don't trust anyone else with you. The front door burst open, the air filled with the smell of cold rain and gunmetal. Ethan stepped inside first. His smile practiced the same one he'd worn when he told me he loved me. Emily, he said softly, like we were meeting at home. You've caused quite the stir. I stared at him. You destroyed my life, he chuckled. Your life was borrowed, sweetheart. We're just taking back what's ours. Joyce moved in front of me. She's under federal protection now. You need to leave. Ethan's gaze slid to her, sharp as glass. This is above your clearance level, ma'am. Richard Hale entered, tall, silver-haired, every inch the corporate king. He held up a file identical to mine. Dr. Evelyn Cross's legacy belongs to us, and so does the asset she left behind. I'm not an asset, I snapped. I'm a person. He smiled thinly. You're both, and we need you back where you belong. Claire stepped forward then, wearing my old coat, the one she'd borrowed years ago and never returned. Her eyes were unreadable. Don't make this harder than it has to be. Come with us, you'll be safe. I laughed bitterly. Safe? With you? You sold me out before you even knew who I was. Don't you get it? She said, her voice cracking. They were going to find you eventually. At least this way we're on the winning side. Ethan reached into his pocket and produced a syringe filled with clear liquid. A sedative. Quick, painless. You'll wake up in a secure facility, surrounded by people who understand what you are. Joyce's voice trembled. She's not going anywhere with you. He smirked. And who's going to stop us? That's when the shout came from the hallway. FBI, step away from her. The world exploded into chaos. Agents poured in through the side door, black vests, drawn weapons, laser sights flashing across the room. Ethan spun around, gun in hand. Joyce grabbed my wrist and yanked me behind a desk as bullets cracked through the walls. Move! She shouted. We crawled toward the rear exit, glass raining from the windows. I could hear Ethan yelling over the gunfire. We need her alive! A bullet grazed my arm, a searing pain followed by warmth running down my sleeve. I bit back a scream. Joyce kicked open the back door, shoving me into the alley. Sirens wailed in the distance. A black SUV screeched to a halt in front of us. The driver's door swung open and a man stepped out tall, trench coat flapping in the wind, badge glinting. Director Mason Blackwood. Miss Ward, he barked. Get in. Joyce helped me climb into the back seat as Blackwood slammed the door and hit the gas. The tires squealed, launching us into the rain-slick streets. For a long moment, no one spoke. My arm throbbed, my heart pounded, and my brain felt like it was catching up to reality in fragments. Finally, I whispered, "What am I?" Blackwood's eyes met mine in the rearview mirror. "You're proof that Dr. Cross's experiment worked. Your cells regenerate 10 times faster than normal. You could cure diseases people have died from for centuries." I shook my head. "So, they wanted to own me, use me." "Yes," he said simply. "Helio Biosystems doesn't want to cure illness, they want to sell immortality." I stared out the window as we sped past the blurred glow of city lights. Rain streaked across the glass like tears. My mother died trying to stop them. "She succeeded for 25 years, Blackwood said. "Now it's your turn." The words hit deep, not a threat, not a command, but a choice. I pressed my bleeding arm against my chest and looked back at the road disappearing behind us at the shelter where everything I believed about myself had burned away. "I'm done running," I said quietly. Blackwood's eyes softened in the mirror. "Then you'd better be ready, Emily, because the war your mother started isn't over." And somewhere behind us, through the smoke and sirens, I could still hear Ethan shouting my name, not out of love, but fear, as the empire he'd built on lies began to crumble. For the next 72 hours, I lived like a ghost. Blackwood's team hid me in a safe house outside Chicago, a cold concrete box with bulletproof windows and government silence. My wound healed faster than anyone expected, the doctors whispered about. Accelerated tissue regeneration. I didn't care what they called it, I just wanted my life back. On the third night, Blackwood came in carrying 2 folders. He dropped them on the table, one labeled New Identity, the other Case File. Helio Biosystems. "You have a choice," he said. "You can disappear, new name, new country, never look back. Or you can help us finish what your mother started." I stared at the Helio file. Ethan, Claire, Richard, every face I hated, every betrayal I'd bled for, staring back at me in black ink. "What if I choose something else?" I asked quietly. Blackwood frowned. "What do you mean?" "Option 4, I said, echoing his own line from the file. "You said my mother fought to stop them. I'll finish it." He studied me for a long time before nodding once. "Then we make it official." 6 months later, Emily Ward was dead. The papers said I'd been shot during the Mercy Shelter incident. A closed casket funeral followed a few co-workers from Lux Edge, my parents, and even Claire, who clung to Ethan's arm and pretended to cry. They didn't know I was standing across the street, hidden under a black umbrella. When the casket was lowered, Claire pressed her face into Ethan's shoulder. He whispered something that made her laugh. I smiled grimly. The obituary described me as a bright young woman taken too soon. I wanted to believe that was true, that part of me really had died that night. Because the person who replaced her had a different name, a different purpose, and nothing left to lose. I became Alyssa Grant, a consultant in biomedical logistics, an identity crafted by Blackwood's division, complete with credentials, degrees, and a resume designed to seduce the corporate elite. 3 months later, Helio Biosystems hired me directly under Richard Hale himself. Helio's headquarters was everything I remembered about power. Glass, steel, and quiet fear. I moved through it like a ghost, smiling, shaking hands, listening. Ethan didn't recognize me. My hair was darker, my eyes disguised behind lenses, my voice tempered by control. But there was one moment, one flicker when his gaze lingered too long, and I saw a shadow of doubt. That doubt was enough. Within weeks, I had full access to Project Testament Revival. The files were worse than I imagined: illegal human trials, organ harvesting, genetic replication. They weren't just trying to recreate me, they were trying to mass-produce me. Every night, I encrypted the data and sent copies to Blackwood's team. But it wasn't enough to expose them. I needed them to feel it. The perfect chance came during the Helio Annual Research Gala, a glittering masquerade of billionaires and empty promises. I wore a black gown and a silver mask, my heart pounding beneath layers of calm. Ethan was there, of course, polished, confident, feeding lies to investors. Claire was beside him in an emerald dress, her smile stretched thin, eyes hollow. When I approached them, Ethan turned, his voice warm and unguarded. "Can I help you, miss?" I tilted my head slightly. "You already did." The color drained from his face. "Emily?" I smiled. "Not quite, but close enough." Before he could speak, sirens wailed outside. The ballroom doors slammed open as federal agents poured in. Gasps rippled through the crowd as badges flashed and cameras captured everything. "Richard Hale," a voice boomed through a loudspeaker. "You are under arrest for crimes against humanity, illegal genetic experimentation, and corporate conspiracy." Chaos erupted. Richard tried to push through the crowd, but agents swarmed him. Claire screamed as they forced Ethan to his knees. I stepped forward, standing over him as the cuffs clicked shut. He looked up at me, disbelief, guilt, maybe even regret flickering behind his eyes. "You destroyed me," I said softly, "but you also made me stronger. You gave me a purpose." Ethan's voice broke. "Emily, please." I leaned close enough for only him to hear. "You took everything from me. Now you'll live with nothing." Then I turned away, the sound of sirens swallowing his final plea. By midnight, Helio Biosystems was in ruins. The arrests made headlines worldwide. The government seized their assets, Blackwood's division declassified the evidence, and every survivor of the human trials received justice and treatment from the restored testament research, now run for healing, not profit. Standing in the rain outside the gala, I felt the first real breath of freedom in years. I wasn't Emily Ward, the betrayed wife. I wasn't Lydia Cross, the lost experiment. I was something new, and for the first time, the word revenge didn't taste like poison. It tasted like peace. The morning after the arrests, the headlines were everywhere. Helio Biosystems exposed. Billion-dollar genetic scandal unravels. Every major network replayed footage from the gala, Richard Hale being led away in handcuffs, Ethan's face pale and broken, and Claire clutching her purse like it could still buy her salvation. For the first time in years, I wasn't afraid to see my own name because it wasn't there. Emily Ward was dead, and Alyssa Grant didn't exist in any database. I was invisible and free. Blackwood's team debriefed me for days in a quiet facility far from the noise. He said Helio's downfall had set off a wave of reforms across the biotech world. Stricter ethics boards, whistleblower protections, a new division dedicated to regulating genetic enhancement. He didn't mention my mother, but I could feel her ghost in every victory. One afternoon, Blackwood came to see me. He placed a small silver box on the table. "What's this?" I asked. "Something we recovered from the original testament site," he said. "Your mother's personal drive. It survived the fire." Inside was a simple USB drive and a folded note, yellowed and fragile. My hands trembled as I opened it. The handwriting was elegant, the ink faded. "If you are reading this, my Lydia, it means you lived. Forgive me for the lies, the danger, the fear. I could not save the world, but maybe you can. Do not let them use you. Do not let them turn life into property. You were made for healing, not for war." Tears blurred the words. I pressed the note to my chest, whispering, "I made it, Mom." And I won. Months passed. The world moved on. Richard Hale was sentenced to life for crimes against humanity. Ethan received 20 years for conspiracy and fraud. Claire, desperate and cornered, testified in exchange for immunity. The last I heard, she was living alone in a small apartment outside Milwaukee, waiting tables, a ghost of the woman who once stole my life. As for Joyce Mallory, she refused every interview and went back to her work at Street Mercy Shelter. The government awarded her a medal, but she never mentioned it. When I visited her one evening, she just smiled and said, "You were never lost, Emily. You were just waiting to be found." I left an envelope on her desk before I left a donation large enough to rebuild the shelter twice over, signed only, "For those who need a second chance." The Testament program was reborn not as a weapon, but as a global initiative for medical advancement. The technology that once nearly destroyed me now treated children with terminal genetic disorders, soldiers with neurological injuries, and patients who'd been told there was no hope. Every time I saw a news segment about a child cured of a disease once thought incurable, I felt my mother's presence. Her research had finally become what she'd intended it to be: mercy, not manipulation. Now, I live in the shadows again, not hiding, but watching. I travel between research facilities under the name Alyssa Grant, coordinating the ethical transport of experimental treatments. Some nights I still dream of the woman in the lab coat, smiling through smoke, handing me to safety. I don't know if I'll ever stop running entirely, but maybe I don't need to, because running led me here to truth, to purpose, to freedom. Sometimes, when I walk past Street Mercy Shelter, I stop at the door and listen to the voices inside. The laughter, the sobs, the second chances being handed out like blankets. And I remember the night I first walked in, soaked, hungry, broken, and the moment Joyce locked that door and said, "We've been searching for you for 25 years. I used to think that night destroyed me. Now I know it was the moment I was reborn. Final reflection. We spend our lives running from pain, but sometimes pain is the thing that shows us who we truly are. My name was Emily Ward. Before that, Lydia Cross. Now, it doesn't matter. What matters is this. I was never just a failed experiment. I was my mother's proof that hope can survive fire and become something unstoppable.